Hey, everybody. Really excited to speak with Dion today, who just broke into tech sales at a great opportunity. Dion, you got a great story. You did a completely different career, also had a little bit of sales experience that we'll get into. Maybe as a starting point, set the stage for everyone as to what your background was and what got you looking at tech sales.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, Eric, I want to say thank you for having me on. Super excited to be here with you and kind of dive into my background a bit. Starting out for the last 9 years, or almost 10 years now, I was in operations management, really starting from the beginning of unloading trailers, kind of learning the processes day in and day out, palletizing, repalletizing, moved up the ranks and ladder throughout my career and ended up my last role as far as operations goes. I was an operations manager, fulfillment manager slash operations manager. So I kind of went through the ringer and learned operations from the ground up. And I really took that experience and thought about tech sales and was like, what can I take from my experience in operations and kind of transition into the tech sales space? And a lot of it came down to communication on a day in, day out basis, creating SOPs. I did a lot of interviews where I was hiring people. So I used a lot of, my background from doing interviews to prepare for the interviews in tech sales. And as well as working with HR in and out every single day, I think I gained a lot of experience in my background from operations that I just utilize in the tech sales space.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I love that. And I think so many times too, people in a different career wouldn't think of that experience as that valuable. So I love that you kind of already knew going in how you could kind of package that into tech sales. Maybe just for everyone's perspective too, you start looking into tech sales as a career. Where were you at in terms of, did you try it on your own first? And what ultimately went into your decision to say, hey, I do want to invest in formal training?
Yeah, so just to kind of go back, I didn't do that on my own. I got that information from you guys and in the course, like using your background and your history to kind of propel yourself in tech sales and use that as a catapult to say, hey, I do have experience, but not in tech sales, but I can utilize that as well. But the way I decided to get into tech sales and what I used was I was like, okay, I'm going to check out different programs and I'm going to see which one best fits me. One of my biggest strengths, I feel, is research. I am a research nut. I dive in deep and I want to make sure I'm making the right choice. So I looked at a couple of other companies before I looked at yours. I don't want to really say any names unless you would like me to. But I did check out two other companies, kind of did some research on them, looked on TikTok, looked on Instagram, looked on YouTube. And I was like, okay, I see what they're doing, but I'm not sure if it's a good fit for me. One of the companies, I went through their certification program. It was a free training they had. And when I got to the end, they reached out to me. I kind of did like a formal interview and then I backed out because it just didn't feel right. And then I found you guys on YouTube. And from top to bottom, instantly, I was connected to the way you guys spoke. I was connected to the people that you brought on to the interview process when you guys were having different AEs on, when you guys had different managers on. I was like, these guys really get what I'm looking for. So Eric and yourself, Chris and yourself were really kind of the kind of guys that I see myself trying to model my career after. So that's kind of how I found higher levels.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And I'm curious, you finally do decide and you go with higher levels. From the outside looking in, you're getting antiquated, starting to learn about tech sales. Was there maybe one or two things that higher levels really equipped you with, or kind of call it a light bulb moment that really helped you accelerate that path of breaking in?
Oh man. So even to go back into the why I chose higher levels, I have a note section here, if you will, dude. You guys, the content was amazing. You guys are extremely beginner friendly. So if people are coming from different careers and really trying to figure out this landscape of tech and tech sales in general, this can be very intimidating. So you guys really make it beginner friendly with the terminology. You guys are industry experts, of course, going into being AEs and then, President's Club winners, like really selling the story behind how to make it to where you're trying to go. Obviously, the testimonials really connect with people like me who are new to the industry. And when I see someone else from, being a nurse or being, a car salesman or whatever the case may be, breaking into tech, it really gives me that opportunity to feel comfortable and confident that I can do it too. And last but not least, like I said, the guests you guys have on this podcast makes it a chef's kiss, because it really allows you to dive into the mind of, okay, what is an AE looking for? What is a SDR manager looking for? And then you can work backwards from there. So when you get on these interview calls, you're able to kind of speak the language a little bit better because you've had that experience of learning through the podcast. Now, for me personally, when I got into the program, the breakdown of the sections were awesome. You really dove into step by step where you should start. And before you finish this section, make sure you have the game plan, make sure you have your resume completed. And in fact, after you do your resume, let us see it. We have a community where we can break down your resumes, we can go over it, and not feeling embarrassed if your resume isn't up to par, because you guys are there to help. So I really like that. I also wrote down some more stuff. I have a bunch of notes here. I promise you, man. Section 1, Section 2, the day in the life of an SDR, what it really looks like to have this role. And I think what you guys do well is you allow people to see behind the curtain and know if this is something that you want to really pursue. A lot of times, a lot of companies have fluff and they make it all pretty and beautiful and they make it seem like this is the best thing since sliced bread. And then people get into these industries, whether it's, real estate, whether it's tech or whatever the case may be, cryptocurrency. And you're like, I am in over my head. This is not what I need to, this isn't what I'm looking for. So I love the section breakdown from section 1 to section 3 with resumes to landing your interviews. You guys really kind of outlay everything in a very structured way and make it easy.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And I know we were talking before the recording too about some of your experiences in interviews. Maybe a couple questions here. We don't have to boil the ocean all at once, but you're taking in all this learning. And I think what we emphasize too is you have to get out there. You've got to get some interviews, even if they don't go well your first couple of times. That's totally fine. I'd be curious. It sounds like the lessons and academy and community equipped you to kind of speak the language a little bit more, understand what you're getting into, but maybe talk to someone on the outside looking in about how your first couple of interviews went, what you actually learned when you kind of got game time situation. How was that? How did you take all of that and start to iterate really quickly and improve?
Yeah, so from beginning to end, I felt very comfortable coming from my background in interview processes. So I think I may have had it a different way than most people might see, where I kind of breezed through the recruiter interviews pretty simply and easily. You guys spoke about in recruiter interviews, they just want to make sure you're competent and you can answer questions about yourself. So the questions you guys broke down where it's like, hey, tell me about yourself. Speak a little bit about your experience and background. Those questions were the baseline questions in every recruiter interview. So I felt comfortable in there. The second and third round interviews is when it starts to really get a little tougher, because you can't just talk about your basic work history and experience. You have to dive into it a little bit and talk to the numbers. When you work on your resume, each bullet point should be very targeted and very specific and have a number attached. What did you do and how did you impact the business and company? So that's what I would do in those interviews in second and third round. I would really talk to the numbers on my resume. And here's a little tip, guys. Have your resume handy. Like, it's okay to have your resume on standby so you can look at it, or even have kind of note cards put around your laptop, sticky notes rather, so you can look to those points. It's okay. It's okay to kind of look back at what you've done and speak to it in that way. You don't have to memorize everything. I think that really helped me. But it was nerve-wracking. I was extremely nervous in some of the beginning interviews. But as I kept going and as I interviewed with more companies, I got my footing under me and I really kind of found my wings and kind of spread them and was comfortable and confident.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I'd love to double tap into maybe looking at those second, third round interviews. I know you mentioned you had some cold call exercises, panel interviews, things of that nature. Coming from a different non-tech background, was that intimidating? How did you overcome that? Any advice for anyone that's going through their first, tech specific interview as well?
So as far as being intimidating, I wasn't so much intimidated. I'm an extrovert. I love people. I think the biggest and most important thing is preparation. You have to prepare. When you get, and the best way to do that is to go through the program and actually take out those nuggets. You guys speak to what are SDR managers looking for, what are recruiters looking for in the program. So go through it once, go through it twice, go through it 3 times if you need to, and really get that information and take notes. As far as that goes, I was confident, but when I got into game time situations, I really think speaking to your experiences really helped me. And the panel interview, it was 4 of us. It was 4 of us in the interview, and the way I did it was I treated it like a podcast. I treated it like a conversation. I'm serious. That's a tip, guys. Use that as a tip. Treat it like a simple conversation with your friends or a conversation on a podcast. Be professional, of course, but at the same time, don't go in there overthinking. Don't go in there kind of making yourself smaller, because they're interested in you. They want to know who you are. So that's kind of how I did it. And when I went about it that way, I felt more comfortable.
Totally. Yeah, I think really well said. And that strikes on kind of a common chord. People coming from a different industry, it's really easy to think of yourself as less than. You don't have to overcompensate and beat your chest and kind of have false confidence. But I think treating yourself as an equal, really well said. And I think something that's hard to do. But absolutely, when you're equipped with the right things and you come in with that mindset, I love to see that. Maybe a closing question or two kind of oriented around just this whole process. If there's anything that stands out in terms of, advice to your younger self, or maybe someone like yourself that spent a lot of time in a different career is evaluating this change, I'd leave it wide open, but any advice to younger self or someone else that's trying to break in?
Advice to my younger self: get in tech sales sooner. I look at it like this, the industry is growing so much and there's so much opportunity. 5 years ago, I was working so hard and I was growing in my career, and then I hit a ceiling, and I thought to myself, like, man, how do I get over this hump in operations? But when I look at the tech sales industry, from now as an SDR, 18 months from now being an AE, from 18 months from there being a sales director, there's so much room for growth and there's so much opportunity in this industry. What I would say to people who are trying to transition into tech sales: get with higher levels. I promise you, you guys do an amazing job at breaking down how to start from beginning to end as far as breaking into tech sales go. You guys make it so simple. You guys are always available in the community. You guys don't mind answering questions. I am a huge fan of higher levels. So I would say get with higher levels, or get with someone that fits your criteria, and really take the time to learn about this industry before you dive in, because it is growing and it's going to continue to grow. And if this is a space you want to be in, I would suggest doing it now rather than waiting another 18 months when you can start learning today.
We appreciate it, man. And at the end of the day, we can give you a lot of the information and kind of coach you along the way, but it is, different when you're in the final round interviews. You've got to execute yourself. So all credit to you for putting the work in, and obviously excited to see where it takes you, man. But Dion, this is a great conversation, man. We appreciate the kind words, and congrats again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate all the stuff that you guys are doing. You, Chris, Ian, Connor, you guys are amazing, and I just want to continue this journey. I'm definitely going to get the SDR to AE program, because I really want to take my career to the next level. I've always look at it like this. There's a great quote, and I don't know how to say, I don't know it verbatim, but I would rather stand on the shoulders of giants. I want to stand on the shoulders of giants so I can see over the hump way sooner, versus hitting my head every day, day in, day out, trying to figure it out. I'll just listen to you guys and progress my career.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it a ton, and congrats again. So
awesome. Thank you, Eric.